Good evening, black people and all allies fighting for black liberation, black prosperity, and black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. Any American who believes that this country's race problem stops at the water's edge should disabuse themselves of that notion. Our race problem is also an international problem in that dictators and authoritarian regimes use it as a way to point out American hypocrisy on human rights, as a means of deflecting from their own horrible treatment of their own people, and as a way to buck American chastisement. Until America sufficiently deals with its own race problem, it will remain somewhat handicapped on the world stage. Earlier today, at a news conference after his meeting with President Biden, Russian President Vladimir Putin brushed aside criticisms of how his government was treating a pro-democracy group in his country by comparing that group to Black Lives Matter. Listen.
America just recently had very severe events after well-known events after a killing of an African American. And an entire movement developed known as Black Lives Matter. I'm not going to comment on that, but here's what I do want to say. What we saw was disorder, destruction, violations of the law, etc. We feel sympathy for the United States of America, but we don't want that to happen on our territory, and we're doing our utmost in order to not allow it to happen.
Russia has a long history of invoking our domestic race problem. As Julia Loffe pointed out in The Atlantic in 2017, Russia and the Soviet Union have a 80-plus year history of involvement in exploitation of America's race problem. In fact, as Loffe put it, whenever the Soviet Union was criticized for its human rights abuses, the rebuttal became, "And you lynch Negroes." The Russian effort has gone beyond embarrassing the United States to using race as a way to interfere in our presidential election in 2016. As the New York Times reported in 2018, the Russians' efforts on Facebook and Instagram specifically targeted Black American communities and appear to have been focused on developing Black audiences and recruiting Black Americans as assets. The article noted that the tactic echoed Soviet propaganda efforts from decades ago that often highlighted racism and racial conflict in the United States. Russia is not the only country, and Putin is not the only leader to deflect to America's treatment of black people. The problem is that no matter how bad these dictators act on the world stage, and they act plenty bad, they are not completely wrong on their condemnation of American racism. The problem is that they are not sincerely interested parties, but rather opportunistically seeking to exploit shortcomings and division. That said, America needs to face up to the fact that it cannot sweep around someone else's front door until it sweeps around its own. Joining me now to discuss is former Deputy Assistant of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, Peter Strzok, and fellow at Harvard's Carr Center for Human Rights Policy, Dr. Keisha Blain. Mr. Strzok, how does America get over this hurdle of having to deal with its own issue of what some people view as human rights violations right here against black people and other minority groups, to advocate on the world stage for human rights, against human rights violations by other countries?
Well, it's a great question, and I read your editorial right before coming online, and I thought it was spot on, and I'd encourage all your watchers to go read it. The fact of the matter is, I spent a career looking at propaganda by people like the Soviet Union or China, and now Russia, and what they do time and time again. Propaganda works best not when it's a lie, but when it builds on an uncomfortable truth. And that can cause manipulation. And absolutely, as you pointed out just now, that is something that the Soviet Union and then Russia does really, really well. And historically, they have done that around racial issues. They've done that around war and peace issues. And we see them doing it again today. I mean, you look at things like the COVID-19 vaccine, which Russia is actively pushing misinformation about. That follows on the heels of something like the story of the cause of AIDS. And it's been declassified. The Soviet Union was behind planting the story that the CIA was somehow behind the AIDS virus. And that caught a lot of traction in the United States. Why? In part because of things like 40 years of the Tuskegee syphilis experiments. I mean, there are grains of truth that if a foreign adversary is looking to kind of stir up and exacerbate tensions in American society, they're going to find those things that are most contentious, that are most uncomfortable, and they're just going to start pouring gasoline on top of it. So I think you're absolutely right. The way that we best defend ourselves against these efforts are to come to terms with the uncomfortable truths that underlie a lot of this propaganda and misinformation that's going on. That's not easy. We're having a heck of a time trying to have a dialogue about race in America, and we've got to keep that struggle ongoing to get to the point where we acknowledge and move past the sins of our past.
Professor Blain, in just the last 3 years or so, China has invoked America's race problem. North Korea has invoked America's race problem. The Russians continue to invoke the American race problem. How deeply ingrained in the culture of these dictatorships is this as a defense?
It's deeply ingrained, and in fact, I think we're at a place where, especially in the advent of Black Lives Matter, it is clear to everyone around the world that America has a race problem. Of course, we know that this is true historically, and one of the challenges, as Peter points out, is the inability, or I would say the refusal to confront that history. And so others are watching, others have been watching, and we've seen this historically. We saw this even in the 1960s and 1970s with the civil rights movement, the Black Power era, the ways that others around the world pointed to the challenges in American society and as evidence to question our very notion of democracy and say, look what you're doing to marginalized groups. How can you say that you are a democracy, and how can you actually even say that you are a leader in the free world? So I think that this is certainly deeply ingrained.
Mr. Strzok, one of the primary foreign policy objectives of America is to export democracy as we have come to practice it. How much more difficult does that exportation become to countries that have a lot of Black, brown people in them if they see the way that we behave with our own minority populations in this country?
Well, I think it certainly makes it harder. But look, I think we can't let our imperfections stop us from advocating those ideals that we strive towards. So on the one hand, does it make it harder if we are trying to export democracy and encourage freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of, any who you want to vote for, if we ourselves are oppressing minorities or religious groups or people based on their sexual orientation? Of course it makes it harder. Does that mean, though, that we have to stop or we somehow have to pause until we fix our own house before we go out and strive to advocate for those ideals around the world? No, of course not, in my opinion. That's something that we need to continue doing, but do it with a certain amount of humility. If we go crowing about the American way and don't pay attention or don't acknowledge the very real problems that are deeply still ingrained in American society, we lose a lot of credibility when we're doing it. So I think there is a way to do this as we perfect ourselves. Yeah, I think it's absolutely necessary and vital that we continue that work internally, but we can't pause what we're doing around the world. We can't stop. When I hear what President Biden has to say, it's deeply reassuring after 4 years of the past administration with just all kinds of xenophobic and racist and horrible comments. At least we are trying to regain a certain level of moral authority about democratic ideals and what America stands for and believes in governments around the world.
I actually take that point that this is a vast difference from the last administration, but I want to put that question to you also, Professor Blain, because part of what we do is to evaluate whether or not people are having free and fair elections and whether or not they are functioning democracy in that regard. And we highlight when people do have those free and fair elections. We try not to recognize leaders who did not come to power in free and fair elections as being democratically elected leaders. But how do we do that when right now we have 48 states where over 400 voter suppression laws have been introduced? And I think it's something like 14 where they've already passed laws to restrict the vote. And in most cases, those restrictions disproportionately affect black people and people of color.
Absolutely. And you know, I think there has to be a balance, which is key here, is that you cannot simply be talking about democracy. You cannot simply be talking about equality and fairness on the global stage without attending to those concerns on the domestic level. And so part of what is happening in this moment, and particularly with the Black Lives Matter movement, and part of what's happening is a demand. American citizens are saying, we need to pay attention to what's happening on U.S. soil, and we need to not just have a dialogue. Of course, the dialogue is great, but once we're done talking, we need to figure out what are the concrete steps to move forward so that we can bring about changes. And clearly, if we're in 2021 talking about voter suppression tactics, we're not making progress. We're actually making steps backward, especially when you think about key historical developments like the 1965 Voting Rights Act. What does it mean to have the Voting Rights Act or all of these tangible gains of the civil rights movement, and now be at a moment where all of those gains are being rolled back bit by bit. So we are at a critical moment in our nation's history.
Peter Strzok and Dr. Keisha Blain, I am hoping that America, gets right on this issue of race. I do believe that it is a problem for us internationally when we go out and say one thing, but our track record in this country says another. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.